Up in the mountains here at Spielberg, it's time for qualifying on what will be the fastest laps of the season. Stand by for qualifying at the Austrian Grand Prix.
Okay, that's P19. Right, we're right on the cusp now. We've been pushed down to P11.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. It's one of the shortest laps on the calendar today then, with 7 rights and just 3 lefts, making up the 10 corners of this high-speed circuit. Turn 2 is barely a corner at all. They'll be flat out through there, a left-hand kink into the uphill braking zone of turn 3. Turns 1, 3 and 4 are all potential opportunities to overtake. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Ace, Sainz, Russell, Oscar Piastri, Leclerc, Hamilton, Perez, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Tsunoda, Gasly, Albon, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Magnussen, Joe, Bottas, Ricciardo, Sargent and Isaac Hadjar. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint. And alongside me in the commentary box today, a man who I always look up to, which is easier said than done, Anthony Davidson. Well, they say that a change is as good as a rest, and whilst there's not much rest on show in the sprint format today, there's definitely a change to what we're usually seeing on the track. And let's talk momentum with this driver. What a sprint it was. They start at 0 once again for today, but with a huge amount of confidence, surely. Well, they'll definitely be glad that there's not a sprint race today. Let's face it, the sprint couldn't have gone much worse, but what we're looking for today is a reaction. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers, they go within themselves. They chat to their engineers, absorbing that information, that vital information that you need to carry you through the race. And, those pre-race rituals are essential to making things systematic. We do a lot of Grand Prix in a season, and the more systematic you can be, the easier you are within that environment.
DRS is being enabled this lap. We can use DRS when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far. Okay, no issues with tyre wear for now. Keep taking care of them. That was the fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Well done. Great work. That's a new fastest lap of the race. Okay, this is your final lap of the race. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 23.4 seconds.
Nice one. Very lovely drive. On to the next one.
Yes, come on, we're on the podium. Good job this weekend. That's a great drive. Thank you.
So that wraps up the sprint race, but there's still more action yet to come this weekend. We've got qualifying and, of course, the Grand Prix. High up in the mountains here at Spielberg, it's time for qualifying on what will be the fastest laps of the season. Stand by for qualifying at the Austrian Grand Prix.
afraid we've dropped to P22. P22. Drop to P17, P17. Rain is forecast in just over 10 minutes time. Rain in 10 minutes.
Welcome from the beautiful Styrian Mountains for another chapter in the story of the Austrian Grand Prix. The Spielberg circuit then is situated 700 metres above sea level, with just 10 corners making up one of the shortest laps of the season. One time around here is a distance of around 2.6 miles, with the best overtaking chances into turn 1 or the tight uphill of turn 3. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Ace lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Perez, Fernando Alonso, Hamilton, Sainz, Russell, Ocon, Gasly, Stroll, Tsunoda, Bottas, Albon, Magnussen, Joe, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Sargent, and Isaac Hadjar. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. And striding into our commentary box to join us today, the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Davidson. As we all know, every single driver wants to know what's required of them. And in the case of this driver, I think things are pretty stable at the moment, that they're doing what the team require.
Well, that's the thing, as a driver, it's easy to feel like you're the individual. It's all about you. And, you want to further your career the best you can, but you have to have the team hat on as well and play the team game, work with your teammate as best you can. It's not an easy balance to figure out.
DRS is now available. Good job, that was the fastest lap of the race so far. No need to worry about the tyre condition for now, everything's looking good. Gap to your teammate behind, 18.4 seconds. Watch out for understeer in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as quickly as you can. Push, push. Nice work, mate. That brings you up a place. We're approaching the pit window now, and you're going to be on hards next time. lap, in this lap, push now. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 16.4 seconds. I've got some information on Alonso. Okay, they're slowing down. It seems like there's some kind of problem with their car. Okay, pit in this lap, and remember the speed limit. We'll be penalised if we exceed it. Keep that in mind as you approach. Okay, so gap to the car ahead, 2.3 seconds. Okay, be aware, the grip levels are going to start falling away soon. Yellow flag. Okay, be aware there's an incident in the next part of the track. No overtaking through the yellow flags. We had an issue removing the right rear wheel. I know it's not ideal, but let's try and put that behind us now and get back into this race. Isaac's in the pits. That's Isaac in the pits. That was our last stop. No more scheduled pit stops. Let's go. Brilliant, nice move, keep going. lap to your teammate behind, 24.1 seconds. And gap to the car in front, 1.7 seconds. Pace is strong, but be aware these tyres need to go the distance. Just so you know, we're getting some strange readings from a couple of the sensors, so I don't think you need to be worried, just some bad data, so keep doing what you're doing. I'll let you know if we notice any genuine problems. Cars in one go, great job, really impressive. Okay, gap ahead, 3.2 seconds. Car behind started to drop back. There's a gap beginning to form. Let's make the most of it. great, you're catching the car ahead, but remember, we need to get to the end of the race on these tyres. Okay, we've got a full course caution. The safety car's out. Keep an eye on the delta. We need to keep it positive to avoid a penalty. Slow down, maintain positive delta. Okay, slow down, slow down. Your delta's negative, which means you're going too fast. Reduce your pace. Right, the safety car's waiting for the leader. You can overtake it. Safety car out, this is a good opportunity to pit. We'll be a bit longer than planned on the next tyres, but we can make it work. Just remember, we'll probably lose track position. Okay, let's get ready to go racing again. The safety car is in this lap. When the field accelerates, remember there's no overtaking until the timing line. Safety car in this lap. Flag. Okay, final lap. Let's go. Final lap. Okay, gap to the car in front, 12.0 seconds. Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
It's another victory and a champion's performance from Max Verstappen.
Well, are we looking at a champion in waiting today, Crofty, with that kind of performance? They were driving with the kind of lack of pressure that you quite often see when a driver knows, they just know within themselves that that championship is within their reach.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.